another purple victory, and I always get to run into some old friends, some people that I've known for a long time. And Michael Regai's appeared here this week, and Daryl Ryder, and a whole bunch of other Browns beat writers over the years. But I got acquainted with this guy when I read his basketball book many, many years ago on the ABA, and I'm always shocked how often, a couple times a year, something comes up from the ABA book that this guy wrote. Now they had a parade in Cleveland. He's been there forever, chronicling all things Cavaliers and losing Browns football and the tribe and all of that. But finally, a winner. We welcome Terry Pluto, one of our defending champions and longtime Cleveland sports columnist in Akron and Cleveland and Akron. He's now at the Plain Dealer, as he's been for many years, as well as the author of 23 books now, including The Curse of Rocky Colavito and Loose Balls. And you can follow him at terrypluto.com as well as out on Twitter. We welcome Terry Pluto back, not from Mars, but from planet Earth and the land of Cleve. Now, Terry, is it just enough to say same old Browns? Is that sort of the headline for you on a Monday morning after the Cleveland effort?
Yeah, sort of. But the thing that I always like the fact that they saw some of their younger players in Sunday's game. Like, Corey Coleman looked like a first-round draft choice, which he had not in training camp because he's been hurt and seemed nervous. And the first game when he was out there with Robert Griffin III, seemed like those two guys had never met before. So that's important. I mean, really, it's like the Browns are just running an extended training camp. When you draft 14 guys, I think they've got 17 total rookies on the roster. So you're looking at that. I'd rather look at young players than, last year they had, how about this? They had the highest paid defense in the NFL and it ranked 30th.
Well, there you go. I think wasted money and wasted draft picks and wasted coaches. Yeah. All of that being said, I mean, I watched Hugh Jackson walk out of the stadium. I just kind of wound up leaving when he left and saw him going out of there. And, my relationship with Mike Pettin was great for many, many years. I knew him well. Thought he was a very competent guy. The question there is always going to go back to the ownership when they've begun yet another season at 0-2, and especially on a Sunday where they had a 3-touchdown lead. I mean, the Ravens just came out and spotted them at Trey, and it still couldn't get it done.
Yeah, listen, to me that was almost like a classic young team game. That's what I saw. They did a couple of dumb unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, and some will look kind of dubious to me. But when you're young and you're not very good, you get that kind of stuff. And Flacco always scares the heck out of me. I mean, how many times have we seen him do this to the Browns, where it's close. It's like when they face him or they face Roethlisberger and it's close, you're going to lose. Now, I'm sure you say that if you're in the same division with Brady, too. And that's exactly what we saw again. I just thought, you've got to get more breathing room on Joe because I looked it up. He's now 14-2 against the Browns. And, for his career, I think he's 8-7 against the Steelers and 7-8 against Cincinnati. So, clearly, and that's not because those are also very, very good teams, but you could just see the dominance that he has and the confidence that he and the Ravens have against the Browns. It showed again. I mean, 20-0. Time. I mean, it's it. You're done. But I knew when they turned around and got that field goal at the half and made it 20-12 that the Browns were in big, big trouble.
Well, your headline says combination of progress and frustration. And,
right.
The progress side, dude, I'll hear you on that. I mean, I saw progress 2 years ago when they started the season 6-2, and I would look up and down the roster and say, hey, this Petonio might be a Pro Bowler at some point. And look, they got Hayden and they got Thomas, and this Gordon kid's all world, and, even the quarterback, local kid's playing okay. And 2 years later, it's a whole different cast of characters.
Right.
But I'm with you. That Coleman kid, I looked at him and said, we're going to have to see him twice a year for the next 4 or 5 years. If they could find somebody to throw him the football, he's a real football player.
I mean, you just saw, Josh McCown's a mediocre NFL quarterback, but he's a guy that actually knows offense and get people set up in the right spots, and so suddenly the Browns look more like a team, and that's exactly what I saw. And, Ness, the thing is, when you've been writing this as long as I have, and the Browns have been as bad as long as they have, my view is I'm not going to kill them early in the season. If they're really awful, it's going to show up. And go through life to say, it's the same old Browns. They're going to win 3 games, and the world's going to end. Let's eat dirt and die. I just don't live that way. And truthfully, I don't think fans really appreciate that all the time. So not that I clearly pointed out the mistakes and things like that, but I'm just not going to sit there and say, they're never going to win a game. Everybody's going to get fired. It's the same old thing. Is there a possibility that could happen in a year or two here? Of course. That's what they do. But, it's kind of like, let's wait till it gets there. It gets close as opposed to after game 2, where if you really do, from a realistic viewpoint, look at the tapes of game 1 versus the tapes of game 2, you see the Browns took several significant steps forward. So that's kind of where I'm at. But look, they made no claims about being particularly good this year, and they're not going to be.
Well, and for me to be there on a beautiful fall afternoon, I mean,
Yeah.
I've been there for some awful weather games, and there's probably more of those than good weather games. Seeing 15, 20,000 people not show up, not buy tickets, just not even use their tickets, and then realizing up the street the Indians have 20, 25,000 in there for a huge game. I mean, I think half of Detroit had come over. I was talking to Ray Guy about that, who's a Detroiter himself. I mean, you couldn't get a hotel room in downtown Cleveland. The bars were all packed, but it was a lot of Tribe and a lot of Tigers, and that was a very interesting intersection for me because I go back to 95 and 97 when the Browns left and came here and went back out there and saw the Orioles and all that. We have our own problems. Terry, we got a first-place Red Sox team in here this week, and they're going to make up half the crowd at Camden Yards because the owner has so run the franchise into the ground that even when the team wins, no one's paying to come out and see them play. That's sort of going on across the street with the Indians there, that nobody's really bought in on the fact that there could be another parade there the first week of November.
They always talk about the narrative or the storyline, and even though it defies reality, people just say, well, that's just how it is. Well, the owner's cheap, so they can't win. I mean, the fact is that the Indians are going to have their 4th consecutive winning season in a row, and they've got the second-best record in the American League, and they've been in first place, I don't know, for 100 days now or whatever. Well, they won't spend, or the players will leave, or, I have to admit, it gets wearisome. Now, I also understand, too, whether you're talking about Baltimore or you're talking about Cleveland, in terms of population and that kind of stuff. You have, especially like in Cleveland, I believe Cleveland is the smallest market with an NBA, Major League Baseball, and NFL team. So that's, for example, the great sell-off streak for the Indians. What happened when the Browns were gone for most of it? On top of it is when the Indians moved from that old stadium to the brand new one. There was a whole bunch of things that happened in the late 90s. Tom Hamilton and I wrote a book about that in his broadcast called Glory Days. And when the deeper you dig into it, you realize how unique it was. It'll never happen again. For example, the Orioles rose up during that time, too, because that was the era of you really made your big money from your ballpark and your revenue streams, not so much from cable TV like it is now.
Terry Pluto, longtime Cleveland sports writer and writing books on all sorts of things and chronicling all sorts of things as a columnist at the Cleveland Plain Dealer. You can follow him out on Twitter at Terry Pluto. That's Terry with a Y and Pluto, like the planet and like the Disney characters. My son is in Disney World this week, so I had to point that out as well.
Sure.
The basketball side, I became acquainted with you, and I know you wrote in Baltimore very briefly many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And we also have some alumni in common on that side. But you wrote about the ABA in basketball, for what basketball has represented in Cleveland and this Cavaliers team, and for you to have been a part of a parade there and having been there for so long. Is the sun shining a little more in Cleveland these days, and maybe not so much on the Browns as you pointed out? Everyone knows they suck and they're going to lose and no one expects much this year. But that Cavaliers thing has put a little pep in everyone's step there, I think, as a sports community.
It has. And it's this grateful heart, and I will say, I think it's one of the most unique stories, not just in Cleveland history, but in sports stories, because first of all, very rarely, is a player as great as LeBron James end up playing with a monster his hometown franchise. That would have been like if Michael Jordan was born on the south side of Chicago and played for the Bulls.
Well, we had that here with Cal Ripken, right? I mean, that's a very unique thing, right?
That's a close thing, right. And the one difference is that it's not to diminish Ripken or anybody else's, but basketball, 5 play at a time, it's not a particularly democratic sport. In other words, one guy could swing the fate of a franchise in basketball, unlike in the other sports.
And he did, by the way.
Yeah, he did. I mean, it's funny. Jordan talked about one of the most frustrating things I remember talking to him, just a couple of us, when he came back from playing minor league baseball. It was like, after you pop up in baseball, you can't just say, well, I want to go bat again. You got to wait your turn. Where in basketball, he misses a shot or two, go get a rebound, go get a steal. The coach, in other words, I could take 25 shots and, Steve Kerr's going to take 6. Well, it isn't that way in baseball. You have to wait. And so it basically, becomes sort of a more of a democratic sport. In other words, that's why the team thing. Of course, football, other than the quarterback, so much is dependent upon just sheer numbers. But basketball, look, when LeBron was here the last 2 years, they had the best record in the NBA regular season. He left the next 4 years. Cumulatively, they had the worst record in the NBA during those 4 seasons. He comes back, and, now they don't have the best overall record Golden State did, but they went to the finals and lost, went to the finals and won. We talk about, once in a while we joke, there's 3 franchises in town. There's LeBron, there's the Cavs, and there's the Indians. I'm sorry, the Browns, the Cavs, the Browns, the Indians, and LeBron. 3 franchises. And LeBron, when I talk about franchise player, it is. And then you factor in, all right, he did it in his hometown. He did it when he frankly wasn't sure he could do it this year. That's why all the tears and everything else. Because let's face it, they were encountering, a team that some people thought was one of the best ever. And they beat them, and they did it in unprecedented fashion, down 3-1. And we always thought in Cleveland, if a Cleveland team ever won a franchise, there would have to be a bunch of unique, remarkable circumstances, coming into play. And they did.
For you, professionally and as a fan and as someone that's done this for a living, I know for me, having been here when the Colts left town, and I know you were a part of Baltimore journalism around that time. Obviously, in Cleveland, you chronicled, the evil side of Art Modell, and we chronicle the magnanimous side of Art Modell here. And, of course, David Modell struggling with his health at this point as well. You've written, about it all, and you've seen it all. But then when we won that Super Bowl in 2001, I swore there would never be anything like it. I mean, we stole the football team, and there we are with a parade in Baltimore when no one wanted us to have a team in Baltimore. Yeah. I chronicle that, and I think it's a whole lot different when you're on the writing side of it and you're looking for those stories, especially when you've been in Cleveland as long as you have and have seen just franchises disappear, and then the Browns haven't been right in 17 years, and the Indians came literally one pitch away and couldn't get it done. There's got to be some personal and aside from the professional of covering it, that really kind of makes you feel a little complete, right?
Well, what it really did, and this is where the professional and the personal met, so I'm at that game, Game 7. I'm kind of writing a column, sort of. I always call it either way column because it was a very close game, and the deadline was tight. And when it became very apparent the Cavs were going to win, I thought, from a professional thing, I got 10 to 15 minutes to get this done, but I also thought, this is the story of my lifetime. People are going to save this story. They're going to read this story. I have to make it good and I have to reflect how they are feeling. And so it allowed me to kind of, as somebody who grew up in Northeast Ohio, to dig deep into, my sports heart and write that way. And then,
not how they're feeling, how you're feeling. It was legitimate,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's where I said they come together, the professional and the personal. And so then to have people tell me, boy, your story reflected how I was feeling. That's what you want. I always call it right for the moment. It really wasn't until the next day. I remember I'm sitting there going, they actually did it. And then I thought, it's actually over. I don't have to hear this crap about we haven't won in 54 years. We're never going to win one. Cleveland's just cursed. It's over. And I just said, what a remarkable feeling it was. And then what a blessing to be, again, on part of the story and telling the story to, people who have been reading me, frankly, for generations. And then on top of it, you take the guy who did it, is from Northeast Ohio, who left, and then came back. And this whole, it was an earth-shaking thing in terms of the sports world in Cleveland. And even if the Cavs win again or the Indians happen to get in the World Series, the other thing, the first time is usually the best, and that's what it's going to be. And the others will be remarkable, but it'll be nothing quite like that.
Well, it can't be replicated. We won again. Ray Lewis won bookends, right. One in the beginning, one in the end. And I love the second one. And I love Joe Flacco, and I love that group of people from Dennis Pitta and Matt Burke and, right. All of those guys that were on that team. But, man, there was nothing like that 2001 thing just because you didn't even think it was possible to have a team.
How are you going to win a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer? Give me a break, right?
Well, we did, and you witnessed it.
Right, and there it is. And frankly, when the Cavs are down 3-1 against a team that set a regular season record for victories, and they got to win 3 in a row and 2 in Golden State, where they only lost 3 regular season games all year. Give me a break. It ain't going to happen.
Terry, give me a little, by the way, Terry Pluto here from the Plain Dealer in Cleveland. Let's get to baseball just for a minute because it is a fascinating case study that these two cities that love football, that love Jim Brown, and you had a statue for Jim Brown on Sunday, and that was incredible. Clearly here, the Johnny Unitas era and the Brooks Robinson era and all the things that kind of have happened and transpired where Baltimore's had a lot of championships, where Cleveland didn't have those championships back in the 60s and 70s. Then we steal your team. I mean, the cities are interlocked forever in so many ways with Art Modell and all the other things that have gone on. And they're both in this baseball pennant race, and both of these cities are very, very tepid when it comes to support for these teams right now. And, Red Guy and I were fighting about it in the press box on Sunday afternoon because, of course, he called the games here for a decade with Palmer and Flanagan and all these. He said, when I think of baseball towns, I think of St. Louis, Boston, Baltimore. I'm like, whoa. We got the Red Sox and the Orioles playing 4 games for first place, and not only can you go get a ticket whenever you want, they're $12, and there will be tens of thousands of empty seats in this stadium this week for a September good weather matchup. And that's what's happened to baseball here. And that's not only the price of putting a team in D.C., it's the price of having a creep as your owner for 25 years who's pissed on the fans, pissed on the media, pissed on the sponsors, all of it. And it's mine. And now they're winning and they're relevant, but they're not relevant enough for me to get in my car and take my kids down there and put an orange bumper sticker on and say, I'm going to support the Orioles. Now, the Indians have been there for all of these years, and they had their run. Why are there so many empty seats in Cleveland? I sort of get it in Baltimore, but I don't get it in Cleveland. All you want's a winner there. Why aren't they going out?
I mean, they don't hate ownership like, say, they do in Baltimore. It's not personal. The Dolans are good people. They're philanthropic and all that. Just the feeling they had the misfortune of coming after Dick Jacobs, who at that time they had payrolls in between as high as 4th in the league one year and certainly in the top 10. But it was a different era. And actually the reason Dick Jacobs sold the team at that point is he realized he was no longer going to be able to roll out that kind of money, and that because it was changing to cable TV. But fans still look back at that and say, well, they don't have the superstar teams and so on. And the truth is, if you really look at the history of Cleveland baseball, you've kind of had 2 periods where they actually drew. One was the 90s when they moved here, and the other, you got to go all the way back to right after World War II when Bill Veeck bought the Indians, and Cleveland was a top 10 market in the country and was very prosperous, and that was like from 47 to like 51, 52. Other than that, and even in the late 50s, when they were good and they were contending, because remember they didn't have playoffs back then, just either won the American League or they did, but they were consistently behind the Yankees. They did not draw that well.
Well, they had the Colavito era and, the Tiant, Sudden Sam McDowell. Right, no one went to those. Hey, Baltimore had the same thing, Terry. I mean,
in other words, but the Browns, now here we go, you counter it. Now, granted, there weren't as many people there, but, I mean, the Browns have been, these little blips of, okay, the Bernie era in the late 80s, a couple of years of Sipe in the early 80s, then you go back to the 60s. But, that's the old thing. If the Browns were a restaurant, people would, the Department of Health would be there because people were getting poisoned. All those jokes would be coming up. Yet, clearly, even though I think actually I was talking to a friend about that, it's starting to show what the no-shows are getting extreme now. But that took a long time. It's a football town. It just is. And it's a LeBron town. When LeBron's there, you can't. I had a friend in the ticket office. I said, when LeBron comes, he goes, we can't print enough of the expensive tickets. Those are the first to go. And he says, actually, the last to go are sort of the $10 or the $15 way up front. So people just kind of go where they feel is worth it. It's kind of like the hardcore. The Browns get the casual fan and everybody else, and then the other 2 franchises are fighting for what I call the casual fan. The Indians have a base ticket thing of only about 8,000. I don't know what the Orioles is. So that's your problem. They used to be 26,000 when they were selling out every game.
Well, the one thing I heard people bitching about was the tax of walk-up. And, the Orioles have gotten into that. Well, it's industry standard. That's the way they do it in New York. That's the way they – well, that's not a good answer. It's not a good answer to say I'm going to charge you $5 more if I look out and check the weather and want to go to the ball game. That's not very Baltimore. That's not very provincial. That's not very local. And the people here aren't accepting of that, and I can't blame them. I mean, I've been the guy for a quarter of a century waiting for the owner to say anything kind to the fans. He doesn't say anything except
Right.
sending out the season ticket books in February because he was trying to tax everybody for signing Chris Davis.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's two separate things. But I just think in general, I mean, just the way my emails run, and again, and I'm a baseball guy, by the way. You know, my dad, I mean, that's why I've written Curse of Rocky Calvito, Our Tribe, all these kind of nostalgic books about the Indians, because I grew up in a baseball family. But I remember even as a kid, my dad worried about the Browns worried that the Indians would be leaving. And when the Cavs came in, he wondered how would that impact the Indians. And there were always rumors of the Indians getting ready to leave. Now, the team wasn't very good, but the crowds are really, really sparse in that big old ballpark. And the Browns, it was like there was never a discussion of that. That was always what was a shock with Modell. It just seemed to come out of nowhere, and that's not to rehash that hash again. But of the three franchises in town, by far the one with the deepest roots and the strongest support was the Browns. And so that's why it's a football area. It's just like, you know, the Friday nights, the high schools draw like crazy.
Massillon, that's all you got to say, right?
Yeah, Massillon, and boy, that's just symbolic of many programs. I mean, two of the big Catholic schools in Cleveland, St. Ed's and St. Ignatius, will play in front of 30 or 40,000 people. So it's, you know, you've got some cities are just that way. You know, for example, I think Detroit's a baseball city. You know, St. Louis is a baseball city. I think Cincinnati, to an extent, is a baseball city. I mean, the Bengals have had if the Bengals were up here playing in Cleveland, I mean, I've seen a lot of empty seats to see the Bengals play. I mean, here there wouldn't be any of those.
Yeah, people in Cleveland would love to have had Marvin Lewis the last 12 years and wouldn't be bitching about it.
Yes, they would. Yeah, okay. So I mean, it'd be the frustration of not losing. You know, you can't win a playoff game, whatever. But my goodness, you know, the regular season comes. That place has been packed. If the Bengals were, you know, let's just flip them. The Bengals were there instead of, you know, the Browns, and the Bengals, you know, opened the home season with the Ravens. You know what the scalpers been getting for that ticket?
No doubt about it. Terry Pluto is here. He is at the Plain Dealer and chronicles all things Cavs, Tribe, Browns. You know, on the Tribe side, are you a believer? I mean, somebody's going to win in the American League, and I know, you know, Boston would be the flavor right now.
The other night, yeah, but the tough thing with Carlos Carrasco getting hit in the arm, in the wrist and breaking it. So now you don't have him, you don't have Salazar. It's hard. But I think we all know this. If Terry Francona is not the best manager in baseball, he's got to be in the top three. And you talk about a guy who I think is really putting together some Hall of Fame credentials. It is Francona. In many ways, he reminds me of Weaver, not so much from personality, because I covered Weaver in '79, but you know, the ability to take a bunch of sort of mediocre outfielders and kind of mix and match and create these different lineups. And his teams tend to finish very strong. They lost more than 91 games three of the four previous years when he arrived. Now they're in their fourth winning season. They're getting the playoffs for the second time in 4 years. Remember, this was Cleveland with, you know, a bottom 20% payroll. And so he's now shown he could win big in Boston with a big market, big payroll. And he's like looking like Tampa Bay with Joe Madden here. So I'm not going to discount them. You know, they could surprise. They surprised me all year. And they're so much fun to watch. Again, this is the baseball fan in me. But, I mean, really, if you got kind of a drop of underdog blood in you and, you know, you've watched the Indians come up and just the way they play, I mean, this has to be an endearing team. But in terms of the fans, there's a hardcore that love them, and they're there, and I hear from these people all the time. There's just not enough of them. And the casual fan just seems to float around and not to progress the field a whole lot.
Terry, always a pleasure to check in with you. It's great seeing you on Sunday, and always enjoy your work. And I'm following on Twitter, as many are, Terry Pluto, longtime sports columnist out in the land of Cleve at the Plain Dealer. And my brother, our paths may be crossing in 2 or 3 weeks with this Oriole Tribe sort of intersection.
Yeah.
And we think we have our own genius here in Buck Showalter. Time will tell.
Yes, I mean, exactly. And boy, if those two guys get together and go at it, that would be fun. By the way, in the same way, Showalter was once an advisor with the Indians, kind of in between jobs. So was Francona.
Overall, look, man, everybody turned this job down here. Girardi, Bobby Valentine, nobody wanted this gig here. I think the real miracle in all of this isn't that they finally drafted a Manny Machado or developed a scope or hung around with Tillman Long or Britton and sent him to the bullpen.
Yeah.
The real genius here is certainly in Dan Duquette either, who was off in a Cape Cod league or whatever. It's the fact that Buck Showalter signed up for this because Francona wouldn't have taken this gig.
Right, and it's funny, Francona, people think he ought to have been, tested for a sanity check after he took the Cleveland job. I mean, they did. Like, you're going where? Because remember, at that point, they just lost 90 games, 3 of the last 4 years. And, no payroll and so on. But these guys can't win titles, but my goodness, they could come in. They are difference makers. There's a few of them out there, and both of these teams have one managing.
Hey, always great to check in, man, and love the work and love our relationship, and I'll bug you a little bit more often because I love having you on the program. Terry, be good, okay?
Okay, anytime. Take care.
You got it. Terry Pluto, one of the real good ones, sports columnist for the Plain Dealer, and formerly here in Baltimore at the News American and News Post back in the day, 1979, with John Stedman and all those guys, and breeding me here, these 40 years later. You can follow him at terrypluto.com as well as at the Plain Dealer. That's cleveland.com as well. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We come in crystal clear anywhere you are. Our morning newspaper is delivered to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. It is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And last but never least, breaking news. Whenever it happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That's brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday driving you home and getting you ready for the Houston Texans and the Patriots and the Orioles and the Red Sox in the 4th game of the series. Luke's going to be at the ballpark all week. We're going to be on the backfields in Owings Mills, and I will be in Jacksonville this weekend. We have Eric Weddle on Tuesday night at Adams Jeep in Aberdeen swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry, and for There Goes My Hero. And next Wednesday, we will welcome Alex Lewis and Ryan Jensen to Greenmount Station in Hampstead, Carroll County, swabbing as well for the Bone Marrow Registry, and that'll involve some crab cake, so I like that a whole lot. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere you are, we are. WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports. Terry, that was